So, distinguished guests, welcome back. Now we are going to start with Session 1, Security Resilience Chain, Advancing Readiness and Resilience in a Complex Geopolitical Landscape. This session brings together leading think tank experts to explore how nations can strengthen preparedness and adapt to rapidly evolving security challenges. Our speakers will examine the critical links between defense, strategic cooperation, and whole-of-society resilience, offering insight on how the Indo-Pacific can stay secure and stable amid global uncertainty. On the stage, we have our moderator, Mr. Joshua Bergen, founder of Alliance for Global Security, the United States. Welcome. And please welcome him with a round of applause. And you can see our panelists on the stage, Katsuya Yamamoto, Rear Admiral of JMSDF, Director and Senior Research Fellow and Strategy and Deterrence Program, Japan, U.S. and Security Studies Unit, Sakakawa Peace Foundation, Japan. Welcome. And also Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, Director General of National Maritime Foundation, India. Welcome. Nicholas Svanström, Director of Institute for Security Development Policy, Sweden. Mr. Yi Chong Lai, President of Prospect Foundation, Taiwan. And Mr. Ming-Shi Shan, Director of the Defense and Security Program at Dime Center, Senior Research Fellow, INDSR, Taiwan. Thank you. And now I'd like to give the floor to our moderator, Mr. Joshua Bergen. Over to you.
Good morning and thank you. First off, I'd like to thank Dr. Shao and Dr. Alan Yang, Chairman, that is, for hosting this event, welcoming all of us for this important and timely discussion. Gentlemen panelists, I welcome each of you as well. I had prepared some remarks, but clearly you were introduced far better than I could have done so we'll get right into this discussion, but if you'd allow me a few remarks to the audience. I think as we look at where we are, our particular place in history, it is marked by urgency. The velocity at which the world is changing and the threats that exist and the degree to which they are working together is like nothing we've seen since World War II. And the speed at which they're able to collaborate, the speed at which they're able to engage in activities that, frankly speaking, will bend, if they're successful, the arc of history in a way that's darker than we've known. One that puts our children and grandchildren in a place where they're forced to pay tribute, frankly, in my view, to a group of thugs and their allies. This is undiplomatic, I acknowledge that. But I think the timing, where we are in history, merits it. On this question of resilience and supply chains and moving the resources in democratic societies in the absence of top-down authoritarian power requires a great deal of work from all of us as individuals. Gentlemen, as we begin, I have concerns around this word resilience, primarily because it seems to me, having attended many events just like this one, having just come from the Warsaw Security Forum, where I confess to you Polish vodka is still flowing through my veins, I'm concerned that we throw this word around as a bit of jargon, almost as banter. Resilience, oh yes, and we nod our heads with some severity, but what does it mean? I'm left with the notion that with resilience must come responsibility. Individuals taking responsibility for their place in a complex and chaotic world. So as we start, gentlemen, I'm going to start with a core question of, when you think of the word resilience, how do you define it? And what does that mean to you in the context of your particular expertise and what you see as gaps within our current resilience? So let's start with that notion. Let's start with that notion of what is resilience, and then where do you see gaps that need individuals to take ownership? And how about if we start at the far end, Dr. Ming?
You can see that I'm from Dime Center. Actually, Dime Center belongs to Taiwan think tank. So today I'm on behalf of two think tanks. One is Taiwan think tank, one is INDSR. Thank you very much for your question. I think that resilience, maybe you can check a dictionary about its definition, but for Taiwan, because this is very important, because we're thinking about that the so-called traditional and non-traditional threat, security threat. But if you meet the traditional threat, we are thinking about that defense. Defense resilience is how to let your military facing any military challenge and not defeat it, and can very good to handle it. And then even you got some damage or destroyed, you can back to the normal situation in a short time. They're resilient in military. Because Taiwan facing many gray zone operation threat, you can see that the recently in Hualien disaster, you can see that we never see that much light disaster before in Hualien. You can see that the local government, the military and central government, in a short time, try to recover or relieve in a short time. I think they will be the resilience. Thank you.
And again, these perspectives are not necessarily challenging. It's just different vantage point. What is your view on this general idea of resilience and places where there are gaps that you can currently see?
Well, first of all, I mean, thank you for the organize this and inviting me. But for me, resilience is well, you have the military component and the civilian. But as a Swede and being in the armed forces, when we had an armed forces to speak about, I'm thinking much more from civil defense aspect and the ability to defend society and how the society acts in cooperation, of course, with the military defense. So for me, it's really an ability to defend society. And looking at Ukraine, of course, that pops up, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I do separate that sort of the military and civilian abilities. I agree with you. Resilience is everything in a sense, but for me, when I speak about this, it's really much more the civil society resilience.
Let's move further down the panel. Admiral Chauhan.
Thank you very much once again. I'm going to address your question somewhat head-on.
Please.
I think that if we look at Hollinger's definition, resilience is really the persistence of relationships within a system to absorb changes of state when something bad happens. What does that mean, when something bad happens? What is happening? So first of all, there are changes which we are familiar with in terms of the assertiveness and perhaps the aggressiveness of the People's Republic of China. But that's not the only bad thing that is happening, is it? So we now have introductions of uncertainty from areas that we thought were pretty robust as friends. And so we have pronouncements being made from the United States which are causing a significant amount of uncertainty, and therefore resilience is required now in areas that we never thought resilience would be required in. And as a consequence of that, because we are pretty poor at doing contingency planning, when the contingency arises, we tend to go into headless chicken mode, and we haven't prepared. So I think that in many cases, where we used to concentrate our concerns about VUCA and the VUCA environment only in one direction, we now have all four elements of the VUCA vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, now applying in multiple areas. So where does that then leave us, and what responsibilities ought we individually to take? So the relationship between think tanks and governments is a crucial one for both to understand. Can I continue for about 10 seconds?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I don't have a gavel. I'm not going to gavel you down. Please do.
Okay, so thank you very much. I want to emphasize this. There are very few countries on the planet in where the track 1 relationship with track 1.5 and track 2 is a healthy one. Very few countries know how to leverage their track 1.5 to the benefit of their track 1. Mostly the relationship is one of mutual loathing. One looks at the other and says, when are you ever going to retire? And the other looks at the first and says, when are you ever going to learn? And yet, track 1.5 can ask questions that track 1 cannot ask. And track 1.5 can answer questions that track 1 cannot answer. And track 1.5 presents track 1 with this option attached to which is deniability. Oh, you know Admiral Chauhan, he talks too much. Finished. You have denied. And yet, whatever messaging you had to undertake has been undertaken. Very few track 1.5 fora, and I too have attended a large number of them, actually recognize this and want to say that, okay, this is specifically what we want. Almost all the events that I've attended have everybody flying at 38,000 feet. At 38,000 feet, you don't need an aeroplane. Anybody can fly the aeroplane. You don't need a pilot. The trick is, how are you going to land this plane without crash and burn? And that is what think tanks should be able to do. So in the specifics, what I think we ought to be doing is trying to look at Taiwan, trying to look at the region, and trying to say what constitutes the difference between maritime situational awareness, maritime domain awareness, how are they related to one another? And if we don't have one and we're only talking about them, then you don't know what's going on, you cannot do anything about it. You don't have a contingency planning network, you don't have a contingency planning mechanism, then contingencies are going to take you by surprise continuously. And these are areas that if you were to concentrate upon, you will build resilience. Thank you.
How's that for an additional 10 seconds? It's, we've heard a couple things already so far. I want to highlight, and we're going to come back to the notion of civilian preparedness, or the civil-military cooperation there. Absorbing changes of state as a definition of resilience, I like that, and I want to come back to that again. I'm going to add my own point here at the moment to come back to, sort of in context of your track 1.0, 1.5, and 2.0, and the sort of the hostilities that are there amidst civil society, and that is governments are the slowest things to change. And there's others here on the panel, so I'm going to turn now to Mr. Katsuya Yamamoto.
So I'm a retired military. So my current position is one of the researcher of the non-government think tank, but I was a military, so I would like to talk about from the military perspective. So first, what is a resilience? To clear what is a resilience from my position, so I think the very easy, the clear to the gap, clear to the misunderstanding. From me, the Japanese military guys, the Taiwan and the Japan, unfortunately, we have a non-government official relations, diplomatic relationship, but we are the neighbors. The Taiwan and Japan have overlapped the territorial waters, overlapped the EEZ, contingency zone, and some part the overlap the territorial issues. But unfortunately, the Japanese self-defense forces, our military, and the Taiwan defense forces, Taiwan military, we have no relations, no communications. So sometimes, I understand that 2012, the Taiwan ROC Navy destroyer misapproached to our territory, in the Yonaguni Islands, without no information to our Japanese authority. So the Japanese defense forces and US forces in Japan, the surprise and what happened, so and invade our territory. Second, 2013, the Taiwan Armed Forces published the missile exercise, overlapped our contingent zones in Japanese territory. This area is Japanese fishermen's fishing zone, except without the pre-information for our Japanese authority. So we surprised. So this is like a PLA exercise in surrounding Taiwan. That's the same situation, because if before the exercise, if we approach to our territory, share the information to us, no problem, because we are the friends, neighbors. But unfortunately now, current, Japan and Taiwan, we have, the military to military, we have no relation, no communication. Of course, the culture, economy, and other things, local citizens, among the local citizens, we have a very, very concrete, good communication. But unfortunately, just the military is very serious. So to enhance the resilience in this region, we have to establish the official relationship with the military to military. Not only Japan and Taiwan, but also all of the First Island chain countries, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, America, and others, Vietnam, South China Sea. So share the information, share the misunderstanding, what we are, what you are. So this is a relation. This is a resilience, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Lai?
When we talk about the resilience in the security sense, basically that means that the deterrence no longer works. So that damage has already been placed upon Taiwan, for examples. And the issue people face and this government face will be to try to reduce the damage, mitigate the damage, manage the damage, and then to recuperate and then recover from those damage. And in order to sustain the society and all the capability and resources, we're able to back to normal and to continue on whatever we have. And when we look at this panel on the security resilience, basic structure around the three strategies that the Taiwan has about the First Island chain security, about the democratic value chain, which will be discussed probably in other panels, and also the non-risk supply chain on the economy side. So that going back to what Taiwan needs about the resilience, basically this is in the context about how the First Island chain, especially facing a threat from China, how we're able to work together. Even one of the countries, including Taiwan or Japan or Philippines, being damaged or invaded or being threatened directly by China, how we're able to work together to respond to the threat. So the issue, instead of just one country, it is also important that just like the Moro and Yamamoto said, it is important to have the communications. It makes the Chinese to understand that whatever they are doing to the country, whether that's Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, First Island chain, they'll be responded. And not just from that country that have been threatened, but also from other countries that they are not directly threatened, so that there will be consequences. So I'll say that the resilience, especially in this context, we need to think about how to integrate. And those countries need to work together in order to make the threatened side, the country that threaten other countries, to think twice and make that into their own calculations.
I'm struck by the observations so far. Many are connected to this idea of communications, mill-to-mill communications, civil military preparedness, the notion of track 1, track 1.5, track 2.0, and the conflict that exists there. I see all these things, and I agree with you. Dr. Swanstrom, I'd be curious to hear a bit further on your thoughts around the civil military preparedness. We're seeing this certainly in Taiwan. Conversations around the same in the eastern flank of NATO, whether it's the Baltics, Poland, and these near states to the Russian border. I had a conversation this summer with a senior official here in Taiwan and was discussing the notion of interacting with U.S. subnational elected officials. And he looked back at me with a bit surprised. He's like, we engage with the U.S. quite a bit. We do a lot of things on civil society, on culture. We never thought about engagement with subnational U.S. on civil military preparedness. And I keep stressing, and I'll come back to this in a bit, for those who are less international, that are filling political roles in the United States. Let's just think North America more generally. Should a collaboration between China, Russia, North Korea result in a everything, everywhere, all at once cyber and sabotage attack? Those who are controlling critical infrastructure are not in national capitals. They don't come to events like this. They're not being read into the urgency. And this is the area that I think is most important, is to reach much, much further down into our body polities, whether that's in Taiwan, whether it's in eastern flank of NATO, whether it's in North America, because the people that are responsible are rarely being told. They're not able to top of mind talk about the things that we talk about. They're not top of mind with some of the issues and areas of risk and threat. So let's coming back to this notion of civil-military cooperation or preparedness. What in your mind are the current gaps? And you can cite whichever geography you want. And if you were king for a day or God for a day, what problem would you solve and how in this context?
I'm not sure. I would like to be king for a day, well, I think it's been very clear, both here in Taiwan as well as in Europe. You don't attack a society that is cohesive, that where there's an understanding. You want to attack a society that doubts its own government, that doubts democracy, that doubts its own institutions. So I think that's where we need to look, and I think Taiwan has done an amazing job, but I think there, of course, there's much to do. Ukraine has done an amazing job, but there's a lot to do. So what we need to do, and I think that this is where the Russians has been extremely efficient, is to not target the military institutions, but target society at large. And well, take it for, when I did, we got the question when I did a military service, are you willing to die for your country? And I think more than 90% said yes. Today you ask a Swede, are you willing to fight for your country? We get less than 50%. We're the second highest in Europe, by the way, after Finland. So, and that's really how you deal with that. So what I would do is really trying to strengthen that, to build that real civil defense discussion, or, I mean, again, resilience of civil society. But it's not the resilience of the military apparatus only, but once you can create a population that believes in their own society and its own institutions, you create an efficient military force. And I'm not sure we necessarily have that. And this is where I see, as you said, the thugs and the bullies out there. They really are effective in targeting the soft belly of our societies. And since we are free, we are open, we also open up for this. So, our strength becomes a weakness. I'm not saying we should reduce our transparency and dialogue, rather strengthen it, but I think we have to realize the limitations here. And we need better communication, again, with the government institutions and the civilian side. And I don't think we have. I do have to say that.
Quick follow-up: is there a country that is doing this well, or is there a country that you would model after some of the things for Sweden or for Europe at large?
Probably Finland. Finland is probably one of the better ones in this. Partly, I think, because they kept their conscription service. There's a dialogue within the society. They're not hampered by restrictions in dialogues as many other European countries are. So, yeah, I would probably hold Finland very high in this regard.
Dr. Chauhan, I continue to be impressed by the language you've used this morning. First, in that comparison in your opening statement, in your earlier statements around the notion that China or Russia, Ukraine is not offended by the neighbor just on values. It's simply because they exist. And to your broad point, I think we hear often this term values. It's an alternative. Connecting this idea to the tracks 1.0, 1.5, 2.0, in this broad notion of resilience, what advice do you have for nation-state leaders, and or what advice do you have for engaging in this way more proactively, more effectively on these multiple tracks, and anything else within this notion of resilience that we've not yet covered?
First of all, advice is something that the wise don't need and fools won't take. So it's not a particularly effective mechanism. That having been said, there's another complication, and that too, and I, like the Admiral, have been 4 decades or plus in government. So I take your point that governments are the slowest movers of all. But the fact that governments seldom come and listen, governments tend to come to forums such as this, and then they tend to pontificate, explain their point of view, and then they're gone. So they don't learn anything from these forums. So the mechanism that we're relying upon for 70 years plus is flawed. We have to find some better communication mechanism. Speaking of communication, I couldn't agree more with the comments that have been made. I also want to emphasize that linking what I just said of 1.5 and the reason why we afford threats to China and other autocratic regimes is this, that if we haven't managed to understand all this global civilizational initiative, all these global initiatives that are being generated in terms of narrative warfare, and we aren't able to lift our game to understand that we are being, that China is running hoops around us in this whole business of narrative building and narrative warfare. I don't know whether narrative warfare is an appropriate term, but narrative conflict is certainly one. So strategic communications have to be responded to. Who will respond to it? How will we get the governments of North America that not only the governments, but the sub-governmental structures in North America, in India, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Europe, how do we get them to understand or come up with counter-narrative? What is our counter-narrative strategy? What is the counter-narrative strategy being adopted, for example, by Taiwan? What is it? And at what point should we debate this? And with whom should we debate it? So clearly, forums such as this, and for this I think, even if I had to give out of 100 marks, you would get 200, Michael and Alan, for organizing this. Because this is possibly a start point. But it depends on what we make of it. If these panels dwindle off into more nothingness, then nothing will happen. But if we debate the issue of what exactly ought we to do to counter strategic narratives being pushed out, whether by Russia, whether by China, whether by North Korea, whether by Turkey. You don't mention Turkey frequently enough, but Turkey is causing havoc currently because it's letting gins out of bottles that can't be put back. And so what ought we to be doing about each of these issues? And if we're going to be track 1.5 or track 2, and if we're going to be wannabe track 1s and wannabe diplomats, then we fail in our duty. And consequently, we need, to come back to your lead-off point, which is we need to have specific ownership of what is it that we will do, and what exactly will we gear our next interaction towards. Thank you.
So in follow-up to that, I want to highlight a couple of key points. And again, kind of referring back to statements that have been made previously, that notion that governments get together and they have 30,000-foot conversations and everybody can overly generalize. And then touching on your point, Admiral Yamamoto, the notion that military to military communication is limited. That notion of, is the state able to absorb the changes? We live in a world that has radically changed. The things that I advocate for working with subnational elected officials in 1980, that would have been ridiculous. Even in 2000, the notion that Washington needed to go and read in subnational officials was absurd. But the idea that the internet has changed the world, has shifted barriers. The idea that the Russians now for 20 years have stolen, by my estimates, and I can't find any hard documentation, something like $2 trillion worth of Western funds. That's fiscal and economic impacts if you combine it all together. And they've done so without crossing borders, battering down walls, or killing anybody. It's an enormous amount of it's an enormous amount of wealth as defined by intellectual capital and human labor. And our elites tend to basically keep silent as though it's just a modern cost of doing business. And the notion of an everything, everywhere, all at once cyber attack, the idea that potentially 5 states or 5 states and 3 provinces could suddenly be without power or seriously diminished power, lack of retail, hospitals encumbered by whatnot. Resilience is something that's earned over time in many cases. The state of Florida routinely experiences hurricanes. We know how to deal with it. You can have a county or 3 that's without power for 3 to 5 days. Okay, no big deal. Take a 5-state audience, thrust them without power, not have a natural disaster, but a nation-state-driven thing. And at the same time, the notion of what I describe not as disinformation, but as psychological warfare, the adversaries will clearly be inserting messaging into, you cannot trust your government any longer, they cannot protect you, they're meddling in say, the Indo-Pacific, shouldn't they just be at home fixing this problem? This is all, the script is so very clear. I want to come back to this notion of how are we connecting these elements, and we think about government, we think about, again, the multiple tracks. There's a role of political parties in this. And Dr. Lai, I think your past experience can raise the notion of how do political parties exist to win power. Then those activists and participants within the parties go on to govern. And yet there are roles for the party to play, not civil society, but connecting on intellectual ideas, moving things forward. So what is the role in political parties in this notion of resilience and civil military preparedness?
Let me address your question in this way, because we have living examples about the resilience, but actually in a disaster sense that Taiwan is facing right now. Taiwan, we have the experience of encountering the typhoon and also earthquake, and then that led us to a robust response mechanism to face with those earthquakes, especially last year, the big one in Hualien. We were able to resume the function within 12 hours, and also and all the semiconductor production facilities resume function within 30 minutes. Non-electricity has been really damaged for about 6 hours. So that was the huge improvement in terms of the what we had in 1999, September 21st, a big earthquake. And then typhoon, we also have experience. But last week, we have a huge flood with Hualien, but precisely due to the lack of responsibility and the lack of instruction from the local government, that led to about 18 lives have been taken, and a huge number of casualties. Homes have been spread away. And of course, last week, we were fortunate to have the mobilization, voluntary, by the whole Taiwanese society to go to Hualien and basically just dig dirt. So those are called the dig dirt Superman. And that started being mobilized, and that's been the story over the places. But if you look at when we look at resilience, what actually caused that enhance the damage and make that amplified this disaster this way is actually local government who did not do their own duty. They did not ask the locality people to move away, to evacuate, and then that results to the huge disasters. The central government later, they came in, tried to rescue the situation, but we also found out that the central government, when they tried to do something, but local government did not respond. So that actually gets the complications about the relief actions really did not address in time about these issues. So yes, in a sense that the party play a functions due to the fact that the Hualien is governed by a different party, and that they have that natural distrust about how the central government is going to do. And then when the things first came out, when people started to account for the responsibilities, and the political fight started to take over. So that's something that's happened. And then I think both political parties, they bear the basic belief that it's a responsibility to do something. But the political agenda for the elections, whether that's next year or the 3 years from now, that started to get into the play about how the things they need to respond, and also when the disaster came, who should be responsible, and all that stuff to break things loose. So this less to do with ideology. It's more to do with the how the central and local government, when they are in different political parties, the responsibility as well as the cooperation, how that could actually happen, especially in today's Taiwan society, very much polarized. And we also need to remember that the Hualien, the county that had been hit the most, was also an epicenter of the earlier, about 2 months ago. There's a grand recall campaign in Taiwan, and the people, the legislator from Hualien is actually the person that caused all the uproar against him. And so that aggregates the issues. So I'm just end here. Thank you.
So I appreciate you bringing up the notion of tension between local and national governance. We certainly have seen this in the United States, where disaster relief is required, the president being from one party, the state governor being from another party, the disconnect that consistently exists. And I think you raise another very valid point around the notion, the nature of political activists beyond ideology. I often think of these people as grass tops. If grass tops has no meaning in a U.S. sense when we talk about grassroots, we're talking about donor or volunteers to campaigns that will go and knock doors, wave signs, this sort of the very granular sort of low-level activity. Grass tops, on the other hand, are those that are in the game for a long time, they're organized, they have trust, either they're a donor, they're a grassroots organizer, there's something along the lines where they have a followership. And the notion of connecting follower, leadership, even at junior levels. This is what I keep talking about personally around. We speak to subnational elected officials. Why? Because they're not recognizable, but they have thousands of people that look to them as oracles of truth or oracles to be trusted. They tend to have strong connections to faith leaders in their communities. They tend to be able to pick up the phone quickly to 10 or 15 people and move the ball. Even if they're not nationally recognized, they can move things. And that notion that we expand our conversation to these audiences, I believe, is meaningful. Coming back to the comment made earlier about military-to-military cooperation, I'd like to advocate another idea, and that is this notion that government-to-government interactions are critically important, but I think often we move only the figureheads and fail to recognize that the figureheads are one piece, the figureheads are meaningful, they sign the documents. The executors are the ones that really need to have human connection. The actual doers sometimes are the ones that need to have back channels, and as organizations and governments, I'm not sure that we invest enough money in this space. We're going to pivot here shortly to Q&A. Panelists, you each have incredible experience, and I don't want to miss an opportunity simply as I'm attempting to move the conversation. Is there something at this stage that any of you would like to add to our dialogue thus far?
Okay, we mentioned about that communication between Taiwan and other countries, and then also talking about that civil-military cooperation, and then talking about the role of the political party in disaster. I think first we need to understand right now in Taiwan, we have several mechanisms. Some is in peacetime, some in wartime. Peacetime, we have a disaster relief mechanism. We also have a information security mechanism. We also have an anti-terrorist mechanism, and also health security mechanism. And then, of course, very important is the war mechanism is a mobilization system. So you can see that Taiwan already had many system mechanisms to handle, to face a different threat. I mentioned about that traditional threat or non-traditional threat. Right now, the popular term is a gray zone operation threat. So during the President Tsai, she already mentioned about the power resilience or energy resilience because lesson learned from the Ukraine. We think about that if China blockade Taiwan, our natural liquid gas only provide maybe 2 weeks. So how to handle that energy security or energy resilience? So this belongs to peacetime. But sometimes if PLA try to invade Taiwan, maybe we'll use this blockade to be the pre-action before the war. So in Taiwan, it's a little bit complicated because we are not very clear to divide it peacetime and wartime. So why President Lai initiated the so-called the whole of society resilience? It tried to combine Taiwan, central government, local government, civil society, and military and government combined together to face different threats, especially ground operation threat. So I think we need to understand in Taiwan we already have different mechanisms, but how to integrate it. You can see we already have a mechanism, even in central government, in local government also have. But you can see that at this time, foreign disaster, local government mechanism is not work because something is belong to the central government. Even the river, the first one is belong to another minister, and downstream it belong to another minister. And the local government also have some responsibility of that river. So it's complicated. So how to integrate it right now in Taiwan is very important. But we can use different situation or different disaster to practice, to integrate it, this different mechanism. Thank you.
So not only ruling party, but also the opposite party, including the anti-military act sectors, regarding the natural disasters, the aiming is no gaps. So not the central government and the local government. So we have fortunately we have no problem. But back to the military. So our Sasaka Peace Foundation. Our Sasaka Peace Foundation is non-government foundation, non-government think tank, and a very, very unique think tank. So my department is focusing the enhance the alliance, enhance the cooperation with the partners, and enhance the Japan-Taiwan relation. But on the other hand, we have another department of a think tank. This department is the Japan-China Friendship Fund. It's a very unique fund. This fund is enhance the mutual understanding that Japan and China, not only culture, economic, and military, because of we need clear the misunderstanding, clear the gap, the misunderstanding for prevent the Sino-Japan conflict, military conflict. So annually, our Sasaka Peace Foundation Japan-China Friendship Fund organized the young officers the exchange program between the JSDF and the PLA annually, not only full moon period, but also the nightmare in the government. So, but unfortunately, it's not good. We cannot 100% clear the understanding. But this is a very few chance, mere chance to opportunity to keep the relation and to keep the change the information. This is a good. So our side began to the similar project between Korea, South Korea, with South Korea, with Vietnam, with Indonesia, and I try to with Taiwan. So from the 2.0 and up to the 1.5, the terminals, the final goal to the 1.0. So now I try to the communication, enhance the communication. Thank you.
The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, taking something you talked about, well, you have a whole autocratic compilation of states out there who actually collaborate much, much more than they've done before. I'm not saying there's an alliance. There's not, absolutely not. But we do see, taking the Russian invasion in Ukraine, you have North Korean troops there. You have indirect and direct support of the armed conflict for a number of states. You have foreign nationals and their European nationals fighting for Ukraine, of course, as well. But we see an internationalization. I mean, I don't see these localized conflicts anymore. So when we talk about the conflict in Ukraine or the conflict potentially over Taiwan, they are international in a lot of context. So what, take North Korea as an example, which I work quite a lot with, works very closely with Russia, of course, but also with Hamas, Hezbollah. We see new military cooperation with Myanmar, re-engagement. So we see that the internationalization of North Korea. But what do we see on the democratic side? We don't really follow suit with the same sort of efforts. So here I think what we need, I don't expect European troops to fight in Taiwan, and I don't expect Taiwanese troops to fight in Ukraine, but there's so much we can do. There's military exercises. For example, it's something that could be extended. China does a lot of military exercises with Russia in, for example, the Arctic. Is there something we can develop there? When we look at this cyber defense, psychological warfare scenarios, what can we do together to actually train and share experiences? And these are a lot of the things that we don't do to the extent that is possible. We looked in a study on Sino-Russian collaboration over disinformation. And it's kind of scary to see how much they actually do together and how little we do together. And we do have the conferences, we do have exchanges, but we don't really get into the nitty-gritty. I mean, just look at the Yellow Umbrella movement in Hong Kong. Who did the disinformation? Russia, not China. Who does a lot of the disinformation in Ukraine? China, not Russia. And this is actually to create some sort of legitimacy over their message. So what do we do to counter that? And I think there's a huge amount of things we can do that we don't, both at 1.5 level as well as 1 point level. And of course, there's a certain Berührungsangst regarding Taiwan for a lot of governments in Europe. I think we need to get over that. And we're going to talk about democracy in the next session, of course, but this is a conflict that has gone much deeper, and I think we all need to step up one step to create that engagement. So stop there.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in as the last couple of points. The first, I wanted to once again take off from what I agree entirely, that there are very few local conflicts anymore. And everything is, as you said, it's everything all at once, everywhere. So what needs to be done here is to build, first of all, a cybersecurity alliance. Find a mechanism of, if the word alliance is problematic for countries such as my own government, then find some other word, some euphemism. But we need to collaborate on cybersecurity. We need to start building asymmetric technology and the approaches to. You cannot win conflict against overwhelming force by trying to match force to force. You have to find some asymmetry. I'll give you a very important but underplayed example. When India was struggling for its independence against Britain, we could never have matched Britain's sheer military power. But look at the asymmetry. We just launched a nationwide civil disobedience peaceful movement, and the United States had a similar experience with Martin Luther King as we had with Mahatma Gandhi. This is asymmetry. You don't know how to react. So I think that one of the areas that we should be talking about is asymmetry in defense technologies. And finally, I want to reiterate the need for developing regional level contingency planning. In the military, in all militaries are pretty good at handling this business of contingency planning because it is part of their culture. We handle emergencies well because we imagine outlandish stuff. We pick up from, I don't know, Tom Clancy, if nobody else, and find what if that happened? Then what is it that we will do? So the number of areas of contingency planning where Taiwan is not looking at Taiwan, but Taiwan is looking at itself in a region. And this obsession with any given country to look at itself and to pat itself on the back by saying that it has or it hasn't got good resilience in area A or B at national and subnational levels is not enough. We're going to look at everything in an international context, at least regionally, if not globally. Thank you.
So let's pivot to the audience. Audience, you matter. And the fact that there's a dialogue happening here is meaningful, but yet each of you come with the potential for a question or ideas as well. We're coming down to about 14 minutes remaining, so I would imagine 2, maybe 3 questions get asked. I would like to lay down the ground rules of my expectations. When you do ask a question, 1, please stand, identify yourself and your organization. And I think the most critical part of asking a question is a relatively short line of sentence with a question mark at the end. You're not panelists, and I'm being very, very plain about that. So I would say seek feedback or seek insight from the panelists as opposed to trying to opine. If you wish to opine, you can seek out one of the panelists later, but this is a Q&A portion. So with that, I think Georgia has a microphone over here, looking for hands for a question, and there's a mic in the back. Questions to the left, I see you, you're a young woman, I don't know your name, forgive me. Please stand, identify yourself, and a microphone is coming.
I'm interested in the reflection that we should be doing better with our relationships with Track 1.5, and I'm asking the whole panel what they think that governments should do to improve relationships with Track 1.5. I think it was a really interesting observation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Panelists, again, if we would, I'm open to all of you responding, but let's try to keep it tight so we have at least a couple more questions fielded. Go for it.
Since I'm the one who raised this, show up. Show up. Track 1 must always find the time, however uncomfortable it is, to actually show up and get their interactions more than just their pontifications. Show up. That's number 1. Thank you.
Resources. I mean, Sweden has reworked its system now, and we're putting in resources both at the government institutions to connect downwards, but also giving resources to the grassroots organizations to reach up, because that's important. You can't ask for things to happen without putting money to it.
Okay, Admiral Chauhan said number 1, show up. Whereas number 2, not afraid of China. I can read the CAT. Recently, Taiwan have an active lieutenant general join the conference in Warsaw Security Forum. And then this active lieutenant general dressed uniform to join that conference. But Taiwan don't have a diplomatic relation with Poland. And then why Poland allow that our lieutenant to join that conference? I think this is very important because Taiwan try to exchange to another country. Many countries say, oh, very sensitive because China will protect, China will harass, and then please keep low profile. Because I joined many 1.5 conference and dialogue. So I think the second point is maybe different countries have different thinking about China factor, but Number two is that not afraid of China harassment. Thank you.
I can assure you a lot of work has been put in on that front to make sure those doors opened. Dr. Hashmi.
I am Sana Hashmi. I work with the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. I don't have a question, but I just want to add to the discussion on track 1.5. I'm also the coordinator for the India-Taiwan dialogue that we do with the ORF Observer Research Foundation. I feel that, of course, the governments have to show up, the think tanks have to show up, but I feel it's kind of underappreciated what India has been doing. We do an annual dialogue with the ORF, of course, it's a think tank level dialogue, but at least at the ITA level, we get full representation, and we have been coming up with this annual publication where the representative writes, and he's not here anymore, but he used to be very regular to our events. So partly we did have track 1.5 dialogue. So I do believe that we have to just get whatever we are getting from the governments. And I feel that I look at all the other governments in Taiwan, representative offices, I feel that of all the countries, India has been most proactive in terms of engaging with Taiwan, engaging at the think tank level, and I feel that that has kind of gone underappreciated. Thank you.
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Yeh from the China Strategic Risk Institute in London. A lot of the panelists have mentioned whether Taiwan has or doesn't have military-to-military level exchange with other partners in the region, but actually a lot of the discussion has also focused on the importance of civilian agencies in building resilience. So I wonder if the panel could highlight areas of particularly good practice in terms of civilian-to-civilian agency cooperation in resilience in the Indo-Pacific region, and then perhaps what are the opportunities for each of your respective regions, whether that's Japan, India, or Europe? What are the opportunities for those areas to work more closely with Taiwan in civilian-to-civilian agency cooperation on resilience? Thank you.
I do know that in terms of civilian agency cooperation, right now that Taiwan, in terms of the fire department and the disaster relief, we do have the training program with some Southeast Asian countries and in one of the training facilities in Taiwan. And also a part of the program within the GCTF, the Global Cooperation Training Framework, also involves some of the functions there. But I will say that when we talk about the civilian resilience against the foreign threat, especially that Taiwan, it has become a presidential-led committee for the whole society defense resilience. That hasn't really been a multinational cooperations. We do not have engagement with other countries, although we've been told that there are experiences from some other country, whether Finland, Israel, even Singapore and others, that could serve as examples. But who are we going to talk to? And are there any agency that could be the top that will link all the other relative functions so that we can have the cross different function agencies dialogue and try to make it to the Taiwan's context to fit our need. That is not really there. And also back to the track 1.5 function, I have to say that you do not have a random track 1.5. Basically, the government will direct the function because only when they have the purposes, then they direct the think tank to engage in this track 1.5. When the think tank initiate themselves, this is track 2. This is not track 1.5. So when we talk about track 1.5, we should not conflate with the different think tank there together and with the government official presence there. Because when the official present there, they are either exploratory, trying to understand or trying to see something whether that can come out of the think tank discussion, or there's a very clear purposes that there are some policies or some dialogue we need to have, and they need a think tank to help them. So I think that this is a very clear distinction we need to have. Thank you.
The situation is this, that track 1.5 doesn't always mean that government is going to exercise control. Track 1.5 in our context at least means that some people exist in your organization that come from government and are on secondment to you, and other people are coming from purely academic tracks. And this is a melange. This does not by itself, in and of itself, imply the degree of independence that you might have for expounding a particular point of view. In a given country, it is possible to have one model. I think it would be an error to try and extrapolate that across a large number of countries. So the National Maritime Foundation is most certainly a track 1.5. We have serving people from the military in this organization, but they're on secondment. And the government doesn't tell us what to do and how. They don't say jump and we have to ask them how high. Occasionally they have this temptation and it is our job to contest it. Thank you.
Can bring the microphone this way. I think Admiral Yamamoto has comment.
So regarding the Taiwan-Japan relations about these issues, so I'm very optimistic. In this year, in this summer, the start began to the good exercise between the Japan Coast Guard and Taiwan Coast Guard. This is a good signals for the track 1.0 the cooperation. This is that before this agreement, that not only Sasuga Peace Foundation and other Japan and Taiwan, many think tanks and non-government organizations advanced to the relation, this kind of the arenas, paramilitary, law enforcement. So this is good. So track 2.0 is advanced and leading the 1.5 to 1.0. This is a good chance. So I'm very optimistic.
Dr. Yang, and I would just point out we have 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So panelists.
Apparently, I think we didn't touch upon the hard security, the military element. But I do want to learn from the speakers that there is a discussion on the expansion, authoritarian expansionism, especially the invasion scenario against Taiwan and also cause the uncertainty across the Indo-Pacific region. I would like to learn from your insight. What if this invasion scenario really happened? Hopefully not in the future. In terms of the deterrence, comprehensive deterrence collaboration, what would be your insight that your think tank as well as your countries take in shaping these deterrence across the Indo-Pacific region? Thank you.
I will go for the furthest away. And probably the one who will do the least, simply because we have a conflict we have the Russian invasion of Ukraine that will made it virtually impossible to send troops, anything like that. But I think what Europe can do and should do, and we should push for this, and we push very strongly, is to be clear about intentions from the European side, the cost for Europe, to make sure that it's unacceptable, what kind of support we will give Taiwan, so clarity towards China, and to make sure that we also assist Taiwan in every possible way to handle different threats, be that civilian, be that semi-military, or be that military. So this is where I think engagement. But we lack that clarity. We're very divided within Europe how to engage Taiwan. Some countries are more, pro-Russian or pro-Chinese, and others are much more clear on the support for Taiwan. So we need that dialogue, and then we need to push them towards more engagement. So for me, it's clarity, be very clear towards China, and, not be afraid of China, but, it's going to come with a cost, of course.
You need to present China with a series of simultaneous threats. That means that, take India, for example, the ability of India to act on its neighborhood and its neighboring border with China you're looking for military deterrence. You're not looking for military action after a conflict. So deterrence is telling the Chinese every day that today you haven't prepared the international environment yet, every single day. And that is what I think is the most effective way of ensuring that this contingency is deterred and doesn't arise. Thank you.
And with that, we have 9 seconds remaining. We have 9 seconds remaining. Chairman Chow, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. Audience, please join me in thanking our panelists this morning for a robust and interesting discussion.